The 29th of June, 1900, Volume 3. Jesus and Louisa refresh each other. As I continued to be embittered, my adorable Jesus, having compassion for me, came and seemed to sustain me in his arms. Then as he transported me outside of myself, I saw that a profound silence, a sadness, a mourning reigned everywhere. The impression my soul received on seeing people that way was such that I felt a grip in my heart. Then, as though calling me aside, Blessed Jesus said to me, "My daughter, let us move what afflicts us away from us a little while, and let us refresh each other." While saying this, he began to caress me and kiss me, but my confusion was such that I did not dare to return those kisses and caresses. And he added, "How come? I refresh you with kisses and with caresses, and you do not want to refresh me by returning to me your kisses and caresses?" So I felt the confidence to give him tit for tat, and while I was doing this, he disappeared. End of the reading. The 29th of June, 1902, Volume 4. Jesus speaks about France. This morning I saw my adorable Jesus for just a little, and I don't know why. I heard him say, "Poor France, poor France, you have raised up and have broken and split the most sacred laws, denying me as your God. You have made of yourself an example for other nations to draw them toward evil. And your example has so much power that the other nations are about to be ruined. Know, however, that as chastisement for this, you will be conquered." After this, he withdrew into my interior, and I heard him ask for help, pity, compassion on his many pains. It was something harrowing to hear Blessed Jesus ask for help from his creatures. End of the reading. The 29th of June, 1904, Volume 6. The sign to know when God withdraws from the soul. This morning, as I was in my usual state, my adorable Jesus made himself seen for just a little and told me, "My daughter, the sign to know when my justice can no longer bear man and is in the act of sending grave chastisements is that man can no longer bear himself. In fact, rejected by man, God withdraws from him and makes him feel all the weight of his nature, of sin, of miseries. And man, unable to bear the weight of his nature without divine help, seeks himself the way to destroy himself. Such is the state the present generation is now in." End of the reading. The 29th of June, 1914, Volume 11. In the divine will, creatures take part in the interior, ad intra, and eternal works of God, according to their little capacity and to their love. After some people with authority read what is written on March 17th, that is, whoever does the will of God takes part in the actions ad intra of the divine persons, etc., they said that it wasn't like that, and that the creature does not enter into this. I remained concerned, though calm, and convinced that Jesus would have made the truth known. Then, being in my usual state, I saw before my mind an interminable sea and many objects inside this sea. Some of them were small, others were bigger. Some floated on the surface of the sea, remaining only wet. Others went down to the bottom, remaining soaked with water inside and out. Some others sank down so much as to be lost inside the sea. Now, while I was seeing this, my always adorable Jesus came and told me, "My beloved daughter, did you see? The sea symbolizes my immensity, and the objects with different sizes, the souls who live in my will, the different ways to be. some on the surface, some down, some lost within me, vary according to how they live in my will, some in an imperfect way, some in a more perfect way. Others reach the extent of being completely dissolved in my volition. Now, my daughter, my ad intra, about which I spoke to you, is exactly this. Sometimes I keep you together with me, with my humanity, and you take part in the pains, works, and joys of my humanity. Some other times, pulling you inside of me, I dissolve you inside my divinity. How many times did I not make you swim in me, keeping you so much within me that you could not see anything other than me, inside and outside of you? Now, as I kept you within me, you took part in the enjoyments, in the love, and in all the rest, always according to your little capacity. So although our works ad intra are eternal, the creatures can still enjoy the effects of those works in their lives according to their love. Now, what is the wonder if I said that when the will of the soul is one with mine, and as I place her inside of me, rendering her inseparable from me, always as long as she doesn't move from my will, she takes part in the works ad intra. Furthermore, from the way it has been explained, if they wanted to know the truth, they could have known very well the meaning of my ad intra, because the truth is light to the mind, and with light things can be seen as they are. But if they don't want to know the truth, the mind remains blinded and things cannot be seen as they are. So they raise doubts and difficulties, remaining more blind than before. Moreover, my being is always in one act. It has no beginning and no end. I am old and new. Our works ad intra were, are, and will always be in action. Therefore, through the intimate union with our will, the soul is already within us. She admires, contemplates, loves, and enjoys. She takes part in our love, in our delights, and in everything else. So why would it be inappropriate for me to say that the soul who does my will takes part in the actions ad intra? While Jesus was saying this, a simile came to my mind. A man marries a woman. The two have children, and they are so rich, virtuous, and good as to delight whoever could live with them. Now, someone touched by the goodness of this couple wants to live together with them. Doesn't this person come to take part in their riches and in their happiness? Won't he feel their virtues being infused into himself as he lives together with them? If this can be done humanly, how much more with our adorable Jesus? End of the reading. The 29th of June, 1925, Volume 17. Just as the works of our Lord had their complete fruit after his death, so it will be for the soul who lives in his will. I was feeling oppressed, and a thought wanted to disturb the serenity of my mind. What if you were at the moment of death and doubts and fears about the way you behaved during your life arose within you to the extent of making you doubt about your salvation? What would you do? But as I was thinking about this, my sweet Jesus gave me no time to reflect any further or to answer my thought. Moving in my interior, he made himself seen shaking his head, and as though saddened by my thought, he told me, "My daughter, what are you saying? To think about this is an affront to my will. No fears, doubts, or dangers enter into it. These are things which do not belong to it. Rather, they are the miserable rags of the human will. My will is like a placid sea, which murmurs peace, happiness, safety, certainty, and the waves it unleashes from its womb are waves of joys and of contentments without end. Therefore, in seeing you think about this, I was shaken. My will is not capable of fears, of doubts, of dangers. and the soul who lives in it becomes estranged to the miserable rags of the human will. And then what could my will fear? Who can ever raise doubts about its work if before the sanctity of my operating will all tremble and are forced to bend their forehead, adoring the work of my will? Even more, I want to tell you something which is very consoling for you and of great glory for me. It will happen with you at your death in time, just as it happened with me at my death. During my life, I worked, I prayed, I preached. I instituted the sacraments. I suffered unheard of pains and even death itself. But I can say that my humanity saw almost nothing compared to the great good it had done, nor did the very sacraments have life as long as I remained on earth. As soon as I died, my death sealed all my works, my words, my pains, the sacraments. And the fruit of my death confirmed all that I did, and placed my works, my pains, my words, the sacraments which I instituted, as well as the continuation of their life until the consummation of the centuries, in the act of rising again to life. So my death put all my works in motion, and it made them rise again to a perennial life. All this was right, since my humanity contained the eternal word and a will which has no beginning and no end, and which is not subject to perish. Of everything it did, nothing was to perish, not even one word. Rather, everything was to have continuation until the end of the centuries, in order to pass into heaven, to beatify all the blessed eternally. The same will happen with you. My will, which lives in you, speaks to you, makes you work and suffer in it, will let nothing perish, not even one word of the so many truths which I have manifested to you about my will. Rather, it will put everything in motion. It will make everything rise again. Your death will be the confirmation of all that I have said to you. And since the living in my will is such that everything the soul does, suffers, prays, and says contain the act of the divine will, all this will not be subject to perish, but will remain in the world like many lives, and all of them in the act of giving life to the creatures. Therefore, your death will tear the veils which cover all the truths which I spoke to you, and they will rise again like many suns, such as to cast away all the doubts and difficulties with which they seem to be covered during your life. Therefore, as long as you live in this low world, you'll see little or nothing in others of all the great good which my will wants to do through you. But after your death, everything will have its full effect. After this, I spent the night without being able to close my eyes, either to sleep or to receive the usual visits of my adorable Jesus, since when he comes I become drowsy in him, and for me this is more than sleep. However, I spent that time doing the hours of the Passion and doing my usual rounds in his adorable will. Then I saw it was daylight, but this happens to me often, and I said to myself, my love, you neither came nor did you let me sleep. How shall I do without you? At that moment, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior, telling me, my daughter, in my will there are no nights nor sleep. It is always full daylight and full vigil. There is no time to sleep because there is much to do, to take, and to be happy in it. So you must learn to live in the long day of my will, so that my will may have its life of continuous act within you. However, you will find the most beautiful rest, because my will make you rise more and more into your God, and will allow you to comprehend him more. And the more you comprehend God, the more your soul will be enlarged in order to receive that eternal rest with all the happinesses and joys which the divine rest contains. Oh, what a beautiful rest this will be for you, a rest which can be found only in my will. Now, while he was saying this, he came out from within my interior, and throwing his arms around my neck, he squeezed me tightly to himself, and I stretched out my arms and squeezed him tightly to myself. In the meantime, my sweet Jesus called many people which clung to his feet, and Jesus said to them, Rise up to my heart, and I will show you the portents which my will has done in this soul. Having said this, he disappeared. End of the reading. The 29th of June, 1926, Volume 19. Each created thing contains an image of the divine qualities, and the divine will glorifies these qualities in each created thing. After I had gone through most bitter days of privations, when my beloved Jesus came to cheer me, he spent several hours with me. He made himself seen of a very young age, of a rare, enrapturing beauty. He sat on my bed near me and told me, My daughter, I know that you cannot be without me, because I am more than your very life for you. So if I did not come, you would lack the substance of life. Besides, we have so many things to do together in the kingdom of the supreme will. Therefore, when you see that I do not come quickly, do not oppress yourself so much. Be sure that I will come, because my coming is necessary for you and for me, because I must see the things of my kingdom, and while directing it, I must enjoy it. How can you have the slightest doubt that in a kingdom so longed for by me, the King of Triumph might be missing? Therefore, come into my arms that your Jesus may strengthen you. And while saying this, he took me in his arms. He clasped me tightly to his breast, and rocking me, he told me, Sleep on my breast, my little newborn of my will. In the arms of Jesus I was so very little, and did not feel like sleeping. I wanted to enjoy Jesus. I wanted to tell him so many things, now that I had the good of his prolonged presence with me. But Jesus continued to rock me, and I, without wanting to, fell into a sweet, sweet sleep. For while sleeping, I could hear the beating of the heart of my Jesus speaking. It was saying, My will, and then another heartbeat, as though answering, Love do I want to infuse in the little daughter of my will. In the heartbeat, my will, a large circle of light was formed, and in the heartbeat of love, another circle, smaller, in such a way that the large one would enclose the small one. While I was sleeping, Jesus would take these circles formed by his heartbeat and would seal them in my whole person. I felt I was being all fortified and strengthened in the arms of Jesus. How happy I felt. But clasping me tightly to his breast, Jesus woke me up and told me, My little daughter, let us go around throughout the whole creation in which the supreme will contains its life, does its distinct act in each created thing, and triumphant of itself, magnifies and glorifies all of its supreme qualities in a perfect way. If you look at the sky, your eye cannot see its boundaries. Wherever it looks, there is sky, nor can you tell where it ends or where it begins. This is the image of our Supreme Being, which has no beginning and no end. And in the azure sky, our will praises and glorifies our eternal being, which has no beginning and no end. This sky, studded with stars, is the image of our being. Just as the sky is one, so is the divinity one single act. But in the multiplicity of the stars, our works add extra, which descend from this single act, and the effects and the works of this single act are innumerable. And in the stars, our will magnifies and glorifies the effects and the multiplicity of our works, which include the angels, man, and all created things. see how beautiful it is to live in my will, in the unity of this supreme light, and to be aware of the meaning of all created things, and to praise, magnify, glorify the Supreme Creator with His very will in all of our images, which each created thing contains. But move on to look at the sun. Under the vault of the heavens, one can see a limited circumference of light, which contains light and heat, and descending down below invests all the earth. This is the image of the light and love of the Supreme Maker, who loves everyone and does good to all. From the height of His Majesty, He descends down below, deep into the hearts, even into hell, but He does it quietly, without clamour, wherever He is. Oh, how our will glorifies and magnifies our eternal light, our inextinguishable love, and our all-seeingness. Our will murmurs in the sea and in the immensity of the waters, which hide innumerable fishes of every species and colour. It glorifies our immensity that envelops everything and holds all things as though in the palm of its hand. Our will glorifies the image of our immutability in the firmness of the mountains, the image of our joy in the little bird that sings, trills and warbles, the image of our moaning love in the turtle dove that moans, the image of the continuous call that we make to man in the lamb that bleats, saying in each bleating, me, come to me, come to me. And our will glorifies us in the continuous call we make to the creature. All created things have a symbol of ours, an image of ours, and our will has the commitment to magnify us and glorify us in all our works, because since the work of creation is work of the Supreme Fiat, it was befitting for it to preserve our glory whole and permanent in all created things. Now our Supreme Will wants to give this commitment as inheritance to one who must live in the unity of its light, because it would not be befitting to live in its light and not identify with the acts of the Supreme Fiat. Therefore, my little daughter, all created things, as well as my will, await you in each created thing, to repeat its very acts, to glorify and magnify your Creator with the very divine will. Now, who can say all the images of our Creator that all creation encloses? If I wanted to say everything, I would never end. So, in order not to be too long, I had to say just a few things, and I did it to obey, for fear of displeasing Jesus. End of the reading. The 29th of June 1927, Volume 22, How God Keeps His Gaze Fixed on Our Interior. For one who lives in the divine will, everything becomes will of God. I was thinking of how I do nothing great to glorify my beloved Jesus, and He, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, I do not look at what you do externally, but I look at whether the fount of your interior is full of my love alone, and so much as to overflow outside in your external acts, in such a way that your external acts too remain all pearled, as though by celestial dew, by the fount of my love that you contain inside. So my gaze is always fixed on your interior, and if my love, united with my divine will, murmurs always within you, you are always beautiful in my eyes. Beautiful if you pray, beautiful if you work and suffer, beautiful if you take food, if you speak, if you sleep. You are always beautiful to me. In each act of yours, whatever it may be, you receive a new tint of beauty from my will, such as to make you appear more beautiful in my eyes, and my love grows in the fount of your soul in such a way that your external acts breathe my love more than air and emit exhalations so very pleasing to me that bring me so much pleasure as to make me delight in you. Then I continued to think about the divine will and to abandon all of myself in it, and my sweet Jesus added, my daughter, for one who lives in my divine will, all things become my will. In everything she does, touches and sees, she touches, sees and does my will. If she thinks and lives in my will, she will feel the sanctity of the intelligence of the divine life invest her and flow within her mind. If she speaks, she will feel the sanctity of the fiat flow within her word. That fiat that, if it speaks, creates. If she operates and walks, she will feel the sanctity of the divine works and the steps of the eternal fiat flow within her works and steps. If she sleeps also, she will feel within herself the eternal rest of her Creator, and all will compete to bring her my will. The sun with its light, the wind with its freshness, the fire with its heat, the water with its refreshments, the flower with its fragrance, the bird with its singing and warbling, the food with its flavours, the fruit with its sweetness. In sum, one thing will not wait upon another, bringing all the acts that my will does in each created thing, in such a way that the soul will be like a queen, receiving all the innumerable acts that the divine will does in all creation. That divine will that reigns and lives in her will draw all of its acts that it exercises in all things. A sweet enchantment will form in the pupil of her eye, in such a way as to discover in all things that divine will that runs in so many different ways towards her, to make her become all will of God. After this, I was thinking to myself, how is it that while I'm doing or completing my round in the whole creation to follow the acts of the supreme will, I feel a light come out of me? And even if I do not see my beloved Jesus, it always tells me some truths regarding the divine fiat. And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, it happens within you as when a container is full of water or of another liquid. If one puts a piece of bread into it, the water overflows outside and wets the place that surrounds it. Or it happens as to the sea. The wind makes the waters rise and forms the waves, as if it wanted to make everyone see the waters of the sea. The same happens to you. You're entering into the acts of my will. You're going around in it is more than bread plunged into the container full of water, and more than wind that makes the light of my will rise, that in rising overflows outside of you. And in speaking to you with its language of light, it speaks to you with that very light with which you are filled, wanting to make itself known with its waves of light, who it is, what it can do, and what it wants to do. As you place the wind of your acts into my will, its light moves, forms its waves of light, to the point of overflowing outside of you, to make known not only to you, but also to others, its waves of light, that is, its truth. Everything I have manifested to you about my will was also told to the Sovereign Queen of Heaven, because she would do nothing but make it rise continuously in order to draw its manifestations, to know them, love them, and possess them as more than her own life. But they would not overflow outside of her. They would remain inside of her, because she did not have the mandate to make my divine will known. It was not her mission, and so she kept them in her heart, even the littlest truths, just as the greatest, as precious relics, as sacred deposits, waiting for you, who were to have the mission all special, so as to administer to you her wind also, that you might make the waves of the light of the divine will rise, so that as they would overflow outside of you, she might have her part in making my will known. End of the reading.
All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him freely give. I will ever love and trust Him, in His presence daily live.
The 29th of June 1928, volume 24. The I love you forms the heat, the divine will the light, in order to form the sun, the long offspring formed by one who lives in the fiat. It's 3 kingdoms, 3 suns, and 3 crowns. How faith will no longer be shadowed. I was doing my usual acts in the divine fiat, and for each created thing I repeated my long sing-song of I love you. But while doing this, I thought to myself, I had become so used to it that it seems I cannot do without saying I love you, I love you. Now, at that moment, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior, telling me, my daughter, this continuous I love you of yours is nothing other than the continuity of the first I love you said in my divine will, that pronounced one time has the virtue of repeating with facts what was said once. The I love you forms the heat, and my divine will forms the light, that invading the I love you forms the sun, one more radiant than the other. How beautiful is the life of the soul in my divine will. She acquires a long offspring, almost interminable. In fact, if she thinks, she gives birth to her thoughts within the divine mind, forming the long generation of her children in the mind of her celestial Father. If she speaks, she gives birth to her words within the word of God, forming the long generation of the children of her word. If she operates, if she walks, if she palpitates, she gives birth to her works within the hands of her Creator, her steps within the divine feet, her heartbeats within the paternal heart, forming the long generation of the children of her works, of her steps and of her heartbeats. What an endless generation she who lives in my will forms for her Creator. She is the populator and the fecund mother that keeps He who created her always in feast, because each child is a feast that God feels being given birth within His womb by she who lives in His will. And all moved, he repeated, how beautiful she is! How beautiful is the newborn of my will! In her littleness, she would want to engage in a competition with her Creator. She would want to give Him the occasion to always smile, and with childlike surprises capture Him, so as to be always gazed upon, to show Him the long generation of her children. And as though fainting with love, he remained silent. But a little later he added, my daughter, the creature has 3 kingdoms in her soul, that are her 3 powers. These can be called the capitals of these 3 kingdoms, while all the rest of the creature, words, eyes, works, steps, are cities, villages, rivers, seas, and territories that form these kingdoms. The heart itself cannot be called a capital, but the most important city of communication for the others. Now, in a war, if the capital is conquered, the war ends, because all other cities are conquered along with the capital. Now, if my will arrives at taking over the 3 capitals of these kingdoms, raising its throne in them, all the other cities will be conquered and dominated by the supreme fiat. How much glory these kingdoms will acquire! They will be the happiest, the richest, and most populated ones, because he who rules them and dominates them is the invincible, the strong, the powerful. No one will dare to molest and disturb their order. Everything will be peace, joy, and a perennial feast. So those who live in my divine fiat will possess 3 suns, one more beautiful than the other, 3 peaceful kingdoms enriched with all the joys, harmonies, and happinesses, and they will be crowned with 3 crowns. But do you know who will crown the forehead of the children of my will? The sacrosanct Trinity, enraptured by their likeness that they infused in them in creating them, seeing that our fiat has raised them and formed them as we wanted, and wounded at the sight of our own features in them, the ardour of our love will be so great that each of the 3 divine persons will place his own crown as a special distinctive sign that they are children of our divine will. Then I was feeling so immersed in the supreme fiat that I felt like a sponge soaked with its light. It seemed to me that all created things were bringing me the kiss of the divine volition, and in that kiss I could feel the lips of my Creator impressing it on me. It seemed that the fiat was carrying the 3 divine persons within itself. Now, while I was feeling my mind dissolved in the light of the fiat, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, when my will has its kingdom upon earth and souls live in it, faith will no longer have any shadow, no more enigmas, but everything will be clarity and certainty. The light of my volition will bring in the very created things, the clear vision of their Creator. Creatures will touch him with their own hands in everything he has done for love of them. The human will is now a shadow to faith. Passions are clouds that obscure the clear light of it, and it happens as to the sun when thick clouds form in the lower air. Even though the sun is there, the clouds advance against the light, and it seems it is dark, as if it were night time. And if one had never seen the sun, he would find it hard to believe that the sun is there. But if a mighty wind dispelled the clouds, who would dare to say that the sun does not exist, as they would touch its radiant light with their own hands? Such is the condition in which faith finds itself because my will does not reign. They are almost like blind people who must believe others that a God exists. But when my divine fiat reigns, its light will make them touch the existence of their Creator with their own hands. Therefore, it will no longer be necessary for others to say it. The shadows, the clouds, will exist no more. And while he was saying this, Jesus made a wave of joy and of light come out of his heart that will give more life to creatures. And with emphasis of love, he added, "How I long for the kingdom of my will. It will put an end to the troubles of creatures and to our sorrows. Heaven and earth will smile together. Our feasts and theirs will reacquire the order of the beginning of creation. We will put a veil over everything, so that the feast may never be interrupted again." End of the reading. The 29th of June, 1932, Volume 30. Prodigies and secrets that the living in the divine will encloses, moving scenes, generations of the divine acts in the creature, divine custody and jealousy. I am in the arms of the divine fiat. Its dominion extends in everything over my littleness, but its empire is not slavery, no, but union, transformation, in such a way that the creature feels that she dominates together with it, and by letting herself be dominated, she acquires the virtue of dominating the very supreme will. But while my mind was swimming in the sea of the divine fiat, in such a way that I felt as though drowned by its waves, my celestial Jesus, visiting my poor soul, told me, "My blessed daughter, the living in my volition encloses so many prodigies and secrets as to make heaven and earth astounded. You must know that as the littleness of the creature enters into it, it gets lost in its immensity, and the divine will receives it in its arms to make of it a conquest, and the human will makes itself the conqueror of the divine. Now, in these conquests on both sides, the divine will celebrates the conquest of the human, making of it the use it wants And the human will celebrates the great conquest it made of the divine, and wanting to make of it the use it wants, it sends it off to heaven as its conquest and bearer of new joys and happiness which it possesses. My will, conquered by the soul, does not hold itself back. By locating itself, it stays and sets out for her celestial fatherland, only to comply with she who has conquered it. And it carries the new conquest it made of the human volition and the joys and happinesses that the conquering divine will encloses. My delighting and beatifying will that is in heaven and my conquering will that is on earth plunge together and flood the celestial regions with the new joys that my conquering divine will possesses. In fact, you must know that the joys of my conquering will are quite distinct and different from those of my delighting will. The conquering joys are not in the power of the blessed, but in the power of the creature, who must send them from the earth, and they are formed in the middle of the stake of pain and of love, and over the annihilation of her own volition. On the other hand, the delighting joys are in their power, and are fruits and effects of the celestial dwelling in which they find themselves. There is a great difference between the joys of my conquering will and those of my delighting will. I can say that my conquering joys do not exist in heaven, but only on earth. And oh, how beautiful it is to see the creature who, for as many times as she does her acts in my volition, so many times makes herself the conqueror of it, makes it set out for heaven, for purgatory, into the midst of terrestrial creatures, wherever she wants. More so since my will being everywhere and in every place, it has to do nothing other than bilocate itself to give the fruit, the joys of the new conquest that the creature has made of it. My daughter, there is no scene more moving, more delightful, more useful than to see the littleness of the creature come into our divine will, to do her little acts and to make her sweet conquest of an immense, holy, powerful, eternal will that encloses everything, can do anything, and possesses everything. The littleness of the creature, in seeing herself the conqueror of a divine fiat so interminable, remains stupefied, does not know where to put it, would want to enclose it all within herself, but she lacks the space. Therefore she takes as much as she can, even to filling herself completely. But she sees that immense seas still remain, and acting as a bank, she would want everyone to take so great a good. Here then she sends it off to heaven as a sacred right of the celestial fatherland, and to whomever wants it. And with eagerness she sets about doing more acts in it, to acquire it as many times for as many acts as she keeps on doing. It is the true divine commerce that God and the creature form between heaven and earth. Then my mind continues to wander within that fiat that wants to always give itself to the creature, and while it gives, it never stops, and it never stops giving. And my sweet Jesus added, my daughter, the human will is the fount and substance of the life of the creature. From it she draws the life of her works, the thoughts of her mind, the variety and multiplicity of her words. If the human life did not have a free will, it would be a life without fount and without substance. So it would lose all the beauty, the strikingness, the admirable braiding that the human life can weave. The same for the divine will. Wherever it reigns, it makes itself fount, substance, and life of the acts done in it. So as the creature thinks, speaks, operates, walks, this fount diffuses in her acts and places in them the divine substance. And oh, the variety of these acts, distinct among themselves in sanctity, in beauty, in light, in love. When this fount diffuses in her acts, it does always new acts and forms the harmony of the divine operating in the creature. Now you must know that all our care is for these acts, because in them is formed the generation of our divine acts in the depth of the creature. And oh, our contentment For we can continue the generation of our acts, and in this generation we feel ourselves the God operating, not the God hindered, unable to carry out the generation of our acts because our will is not there in the creature. So to our care adds our custody and jealousy of these acts. Your Jesus remains inside and around the creature in order to keep it in custody. My jealousy has a gaze fixed on them, to watch them, to delight myself, and take all the pleasure that the generation of its acts operating in her possesses. After all, our will possesses an infinite value, and not keeping even just one act of it in our custody would be like going against our very selves. Even more, you must know that since it is fount and substance of our Supreme Being, our power, sanctity, goodness, and all our attributes form a crown around our will and all its acts, to be dependent upon it and give it the homage and custody of all its acts, whether it does them in us or in the creature. Therefore, be attentive and let yourself be dominated by my will, if you don't ever want to lose your Jesus, whom you so much long for, love, and want. End of the reading. The 29th of June, 1933, volume 32. How in the divine will there are no stops, making one repeater of our life. Commitment that becomes entrusted to her. How God adapts himself to the human littleness. My flight in the divine volition continues. I feel that if it could not continue, the life to live, the nourishment to satisfy my hunger, the light in order to see, the feet in order to walk, would be lacking to me. Alas, I would remain immobilized, wrapped in a profound night. I would lose my way and would remain halfway on the way. My God, my Jesus, Holy Mama, free me. And when you see me in danger of stopping, come to my help. Give me a hand so that I do not stop, or else bring me to heaven, where there are no dangers of these stops, and I can boast by saying, I have never stopped, and therefore have never lacked either food or light, or he who, while he conducted me with his sweet speech, he instructed me and enraptured me. But while my mind was all plunged in the divine will, my wise teacher Jesus, surprising me with his brief little visit, told me, my daughter, one who lives in my divine will feels the need of never interrupting her walk, nor is there danger of her stopping, neither on earth nor in heaven, because being eternal, its ways and its steps are interminable, and one who lives in it receives as nature the good of being able to always walk. Stopping oneself in my will would be to make our divine life lack an act of life that it forms in her soul, because you must know that one who lives in my divine will arrives at so much and can do so much, even to repeating our divine life. Our fiat gives everything necessary to the creature who lives in it, who with her acts makes herself repeater of the same life of God. And if you knew what it means to repeat our life, the glory, the honour, the love that she gives us, the good that she makes descend on all generations, what she does is incalculable. And only our will has this power of making this prodigy so great, that to no one is it given to make themselves repeater of our same divine life in the creature. So I, in hearing this, said, my love, what are you saying? How can one ever reach to so much? It seems to me that it gives of the incredible. And Jesus, interrupting me, said, my daughter, do not marvel. Everything is possible for my will, even repeating our life. You must know that our Supreme Being has, in virtue of its nature, the ability to repeat however many times it wants, as indeed we repeat our divine life all entire for each individual, for every created thing, everywhere, in every place, and all over. Our immensity brings us, our power forms us, and our one life that we possess repeats, bilocates, multiplies so many divine lives of ours, such that only one who does not want them does not take them. Otherwise, when one says, "Where is God? In heaven, on earth, and all over," it would reduce into words, but not into deeds. Now, one who lives in our will, with her acts, makes herself co-operator of our life, that continually repeats itself for love of the creatures, and therefore we feel ourselves repeated by her littleness. And oh, the contentment, the happiness that we feel. And since our love finds its outlet, its exchange, in feeling its own life repeated by its beloved creature, then in the emphasis of love and of the indescribable joy that we feel, we say, "We have given her everything, and she has given us everything, nor could she give us more, because we feel that she brings us our immensity everywhere. She appears from all sides. There is no point where she does not make herself felt." And oh, how sweet and welcome it is to hear everywhere in our life that she possesses, "I love you, I adore you, I thank you, I bless you." In fact, the task we entrust to one who lives in our volition is to repeat our same divine life. Therefore, be attentive and let your walk be continuous. After this, I continued to think about the divine will, and my always lovable Jesus added, "My daughter, if you knew the sweet and welcome surprises that the creature makes us in our will, she is tiny, and finding herself in our fiat, she finds herself surrounded by an immensity that has no end, by a power that has no limits, by a love that not only envelops her completely, but she feels that she herself is nothing other than love. Our beauty invests her, and she remains enraptured. In fact, the tiny one moves her little foot, and she looks at the immensity that surrounds her. And while she moves her step, she wants to take who knows how much of our immensity, except she cannot reach it, such that she takes but a few drops of our power, our love, and our beauty. But although drops, yet they are enough to fill her so much, even to overflowing outside, even to forming around her little rivers of our love, of our power, and of our beauty. And the tiny one becomes entangled, tired, because she wants to take more of it, but she cannot, because she lacks the space for where to be able to enclose what she wants to take. And our Supreme Being lets her do it. Rather, we enjoy her efforts and her entanglements. We delight ourselves. We smile at her. And the tiny one looks at us to ask for help from us because she feels the need to extend herself more in our immensity, power, and love. But do you know why? She wants to give us more. She wants the contentment that she wants to tell us, "My efforts, my entanglements are because I want to tell you that I love you even more. Oh, if I could possess all your love, how content I would be in order to be able to tell you, I love you as much as you love me." This tiny one, with her efforts, with her entanglements, with her saying, wounds us, enraptures us, and enchains us. And then do you know what we do? We take the tiny one and we adapt ourselves to her. With a prodigy of our omnipotence, we make our immensity, our power, sanctity, love, beauty, and goodness flow in a way that our divine being remains inside and outside of her, inseparable from her, and she sees that everything is hers. And the tiny one, in her emphasis of love, tells us, "How content and happy I am. I can tell you that your immensity is yours and mine, and I love you with immense love, with powerful love. My love does not lack anything, neither your sanctity, nor your goodness, nor your beauty that enraptures, conquers, and obtains all." Not to content the human littleness in our will is impossible for us. And since because of her littleness she cannot adapt herself to us, God adapts himself to her. And it is easy for us because there are no elements extraneous to us, but everything is ours. At the most, she will be little, but this says nothing. More will be our care of making her as beautiful as we can. On the other hand, one who does not live in our divine will, in the human littleness, there are so many elements extraneous from us, will, desires, affections, thoughts that are not ours. And one can say that she must adapt herself to us by removing what is not ours. Otherwise, she will not be able to comprehend our will, much less be able to ascend and enter into its celestial spheres, and therefore she will remain empty of God, full of miseries in the constraints of the human life. How many lives will find themselves without the growth of divine life because they have not done my will, nor are they occupied with comprehending what it means to live of it and the great good that they can receive. Therefore they will be as so many rather ignorant ones and illiterate of their Creator. End of the reading. Attention, eye of the soul. In the divine will there are no blind ones. The magnet, the mintage of the divine image in our acts. God makes himself prisoner of the creature. The divine volition never leaves me alone. It seems to me that it is always looking at me in order to invest my thought, my works, the littlest of my acts, but it wants my attention. It wants that I know that it wants to invest my acts. And looking at each other in turn, it gives and I receive. And if I do not pay attention, it reproves me, but with a way so sweet as to feel my heart break. And it tells me, attention is the eye of the soul that makes known the gift that I want to make her and disposes the action of receiving my investment. I do not want to give my goods to the blind. I want that you see it and know it. But do you know why? By seeing it, you appreciate my gift, and by knowing it, you understand it and you love it. And I make you vividly feel my light, my power, my love. And I feel repeating in your little thought, word, and action what my divine will itself knows how to do, how it knows how to love. Therefore, the first thing that I do to one who wants to live in it is to give the eye in order to look at each other and to know each other. When we are known, everything is done. The living in my will is assured with its full vigour. So my mind was lost in a sea of light and of thoughts, and my sweet Jesus, surprising me, told me, my daughter, the living in my will is the living of heaven. It is to feel in the soul the life of light, of love, the life of divine action, the life of prayer, what it does for her. Everything is palpitating life in her acts. You must know that one who does the divine will and lives in it becomes the magnet of the divine acts. Her little motion, thought, and works are magnetic, with a magnet so powerful as to magnetize her Creator in a way that this magnet attracts him so much that he cannot withdraw from the creature. Our Supreme Being feels its gaze magnetized, and it is always fixed in looking at her. It feels its arms magnetized, and it holds her clasped to its bosom, the magnet of our love. And we pour out so much that we arrive at feeling that she loves us as we love ourselves. Now, when the creature has formed this magnet for us, our love arrives at the excesses. As she forms her acts, even the least, we imprint our divine mintage, and we let them pass as our acts with the imprint of our supreme image, and we place them in our divine treasuries as our coins that the creature has given us. And if you knew what it means to be able to say that our Supreme Being has received our coins from the creature, Indeed, our image minted by us guarantees it. It would burst your heart with pure love. To give ourselves to creatures is power that we have, because, possessing everything, to give is nothing other than an outpouring of our love. But to place the creature in the condition of being able to give to us and give us our acts as hers, coins minted with our image, is the love that surpasses everything, that not being able to contain it, in our emphasis of love we say, you have wounded us. The magnet of your acts has enraptured us and has rendered us sweet prisoners in your soul. And we give tit for tat to wound you, to enrapture you, and to imprison you in us. Therefore, my daughter, I want you all eyes, so that you look at and know well what my divine will wants to do in you. End of the reading. There are no more readings today.